people holding signs and showing their camaraderie and wanting better for Isabella and wanting justice for Isabella. They wore pink because that was Isabella's favorite color.
They called her clumsy. They called it discipline. They called 911 far too late. This isn't just a story about a life stolen. It's about every adult who turned a blind eye, a little girl whose gentle pleas were unheard, whose struggles were overlooked, and whose laughter slowly faded while the world looked away. To truly understand what went wrong and how this tragedy unfolded, we need to know who she really was, beyond the labels and shadows. On July 5th, 2019, in the small, peaceful town of Cold Springs, Nevada, Isabella Loving was born to Nicholas and Andrea Loving. A cheerful little girl with a gentle nature, she found joy in simple things, her favorite color pink, twirling around the house to music, splashing paint during bath time, and spending quiet moments coloring. Life at home was full of movement and noise, with Isabella sharing it alongside two older sisters, an older brother, and eventually a baby brother. Andrea had a son from a previous relationship, and Nicholas entered their lives when the boy was still very young. Over time, their family grew. After 3 daughters, the couple finally welcomed the baby boy Nicholas had long hoped for, a moment of celebration in their busy household. Their home on Crystal Canyon Boulevard reflected a working family trying to build a life together. Nicholas and Andrea ran a home remodeling business, Extreme Remodeling LLC, and appeared to balance entrepreneurship and parenting with the usual ups and downs. To those looking in, things seemed fairly typical, but a closer look at Isabella's experience reveals quiet signs of disconnection. In photos, she often looked less included, dressed in older clothes, her hair noticeably short, her face more reserved. Compared to her siblings' cozy beds, she had a small mattress on the floor, which may have seemed practical but left a clear impression. In a house full of beds, love, and shared laughter, Isabella's corner told a softer, quieter story. It's the kind of irony life seems to enjoy, where the smallest child with the brightest smile can sometimes be the most overlooked.
But before we begin, I just want to say thank you to my amazing viewers and subscribers. Your support through likes, shares, and comments means the world to me. Your engagement helps make these stories even more meaningful. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. There was a time when Isabella appeared to be treated with the same love and care as the rest of her siblings. A former nanny who had once helped care for the children shared old photos of Isabella as a baby, smiling, healthy, and surrounded by warmth. The nanny confirmed that during her time with the family, Isabella had not been singled out in any noticeable way. She blended right in with her siblings, receiving the same affection and attention. But when the family welcomed their youngest child, Isabella's little brother, the dynamic inside the home began to shift. Andrea chose to stay home with the kids, and with that decision, the nanny's help was no longer needed. That change marked the beginning of what some believe was a gradual shift in how Isabella was treated. Previously, Andrea had worked alongside Nicholas in their shared venture, a remodeling company known as Extreme Remodeling LLC. Curiously, the business had gone through several name changes over time, though not because they were rebranding for marketing flair. According to some former clients, the couple may have had a few too many creative approaches to customer service. Allegations surfaced claiming that deposits were collected, but repairs were left unfinished, or in some cases, never even started. In other homes, the work was reportedly so poorly done that it created more problems than it solved. It all paints a picture not just of an unreliable business, but of two people who may have been better at escaping accountability than handling drywall. At approximately 6:50 a.m. on April 3, 2025, a call was made to emergency services by Isabella's father. He reported that his 5-year-old daughter, who hadn't been feeling well the previous night, was now unresponsive and cold. Emergency crews quickly arrived at the family's residence on Crystal Canyon Boulevard. Upstairs, they found Isabella lying near a small mattress placed directly on the floor. Despite their efforts, it became clear there was nothing that could be done. Isabella was pronounced deceased at the scene. While first responders worked professionally, they couldn't help but notice the visible signs of injury, prompting immediate concern about the situation surrounding her passing. In a home filled with noise and movement, one quiet room told a much heavier story. Given the unusual circumstances, law enforcement was called to investigate. When questioned, Isabella's father offered a series of explanations for her condition. He claimed she had recently fallen from his truck, and he had caught her by the arms, an action, he said, that might explain the bruising. He also stated that another child had accidentally struck her in the face with a toy bat, which supposedly caused a black eye. Then, as if unlucky events had a weekly subscription, he shared that Isabella had fallen from the truck a second time just days later, this time in her head. While these statements attempted to account for a few of her injuries, the majority were left unexplained. And unfortunately, some stories, no matter how creative, fail to cover what silence reveals. Nicholas described Isabella as unusually prone to accidents, mentioning that she often tripped or fell, including more than once on the stairs. He explained that he and Andrea had even considered taking her to a specialist in June to look into the cause of her frequent falls. Both parents also shared that Isabella had been unwell for over a week leading up to her death. According to them, she had shown concerning symptoms like coughing up blood and mucus and had vomited the evening before she passed. They said she was put to bed sometime between 7 and 8 p.m., and during the night, one of the other children woke them up to report that Isabella was sick. The parents checked on her, found nothing alarming, and returned to sleep. Nicholas claimed he checked in on her once more during the night, only to discover in the morning that she was no longer responsive. It was a timeline that, if nothing else, raised more questions than it answered. When officials asked why medical help hadn't been sought earlier, especially given the severity and length of Isabella's reported illness, the parents responded with reasoning that was, at best, confusing. They admitted they had been hesitant to take her in for treatment because they were worried medical professionals would notice things on her body. They also cited an unclear claim that someone had once advised them not to seek medical help until an illness had persisted for at least 12 days. Naturally, this explanation didn't exactly clear anything up.
Adding to the concern, both parents acknowledged that they were afraid of another visit from Child Protective Services, which had previously opened a case involving the family. That case, however, had recently been closed, a small detail that probably didn't reassure anyone at this point. In a strange twist of logic, it seemed the fear of being investigated had somehow outweighed the urgency of caring for a very sick child. Shortly after giving their initial accounts, Nicholas and Andrea were brought to the Woe County Sheriff's Department for follow-up interviews. During questioning, Isabella's father denied ever using physical discipline or any form of aggression toward his daughter. He told officers that he spent most of his time working and wasn't home enough to know how her injuries occurred. When asked about visible scrapes on his hands and fingers, he attributed them to his construction work. He also brought up a few incidents that, in his view, might explain what had happened to Isabella. One such event involved her falling from his Ford pickup truck about a week earlier. Interestingly, his version of that fall changed during the interview. From her hitting the pavement face first in one telling to using her hands to break the fall in another. Perhaps memory becomes a little flexible when trying to account for the unexplainable. Nicholas recounted that on the night of April 2nd, Isabella wasn't feeling well and mentioned she felt cold. He checked her temperature and found it to be around 96 or 97 degrees. Rather than seeking medical help, he opted for a bath and then sent her to bed. He said he turned in for the night around 9 or 10 p.m. and was later awakened by someone panicking that Isabella wasn't breathing, supposedly around 7 a.m. However, that part of the timeline began to shift, too. Eventually, Nicholas admitted that he and Andrea had actually found Isabella unresponsive closer to 2 a.m., but waited nearly 5 hours before contacting emergency services. When asked why, he explained that he had been comforting his distraught wife. During the same interview, he revealed something else, that Isabella had been kept in a small 5x5 space in the bedroom, a makeshift cubby, he called it. He acknowledged placing her in there once, but said it was usually Andrea who used it. a parenting strategy not likely to be endorsed in any self-help book. During her interview with detectives, Andrea acknowledged that Isabella had been placed in the small 5x5 cubby as a form of discipline, sometimes for simple things like sneaking candy. She then revealed that just 4 days before emergency services were contacted, she witnessed an incident involving Nicholas. According to Andrea, Nicholas acted aggressively toward Isabella and pulled her upstairs by the hood of her clothing. Shortly after, she recalled hearing raised voices and a loud thump against the wall. The following day, she noticed a visible mark on her daughter's face. By the end of the questioning, Andrea appeared filled with remorse. She told officers that she believed she should be held accountable for not stepping in, and that Nicholas should answer for what happened to their daughter.
Investigators also spoke with Isabella's older sisters, who recalled being woken up around midnight. They were brought downstairs and told by their father that Isabella had passed away and that they might be going on a trip soon. This conversation, odd as it was, helped solidify the timeline. With their findings mounting, authorities felt they had enough to move forward. Nicholas Loving, age 35, was formally charged with causing substantial bodily harm and placed in custody on a $10 million cash-only bond. Despite Andrea's own admission of guilt, openly stating she should be held accountable for doing nothing, she had not been arrested at that time. Apparently, remorse doesn't always come with handcuffs. After Nicholas's arrest, the explanation for the delayed emergency call began to evolve. Initially, he claimed he had been comforting Andrea. Later, he suggested it was Andrea who prevented the call, allegedly because she wanted to flee. Meanwhile, Andrea gave her own version, saying Nicholas wouldn't let her call for help because he was considering something far more drastic, burying Isabella in the backyard and leaving for Virginia. She claims she talked him out of it, citing practical concerns, including what would happen to the body. Regardless of whose version came closer to the truth, the outcome was the same. At some point that night, Isabella's body was moved from the small cubby where she typically slept, placed with her mattress in another part of the room, and a story was crafted around a discovery at 7 a.m. In the end, the only thing both parents seemed to agree on was how to rewrite the ending. At this time, the official cause of Isabella's death remains undetermined, as the medical examiner has not yet finalized the autopsy report. There is hope that, once the findings are released, they may lead to further legal action, including possible charges against her mother. Many who have followed the case closely point to photos of Isabella that seem to reflect a troubling pattern. One image in particular, reportedly taken during a family trip to Disneyland just weeks before her passing, has raised questions. In it, Isabella appears visibly unwell, a fact that has stirred confusion about why anyone would think it was appropriate to take her out in public in such a state. Some online speculation has suggested that Isabella may have been treated differently due to rumors about her parentage, possibly being the result of an affair. Still, while that theory circulates, it remains unverified. Ironically, many observers have commented that Isabella bore a strong resemblance to her father. Just 2 weeks after Isabella's death on April 17th, Andrea left the family home, reportedly taking a number of belongings with her. By that time, the other children had already been placed in protective custody. Despite the circumstances, Andrea had no apparent issue returning to the same home where Isabella had died, even staying there for several more weeks. Since then, she has been living with her own mother, Diana 𝐂𝐤𝐳, who has publicly supported her daughter. Diana has claimed that Andrea was the victim of domestic violence and shouldn't be held responsible for what happened. She also stated that Isabella appeared healthy and unharmed during a visit in January, just a few months before the incident. While some may see this as a defense, others view it more as denial wrapped in family loyalty and sprinkled with a strong dose of selective memory. In the wake of Isabella's passing, public outcry has continued to grow. Ashley Viney, the aunt of Andrea's oldest son, has organized protests demanding accountability, not only from the parents but from the child welfare system itself. Ashley and others had raised concerns about Isabella's well-being well before her death, but despite these efforts, the child services case tied to the family was closed just 1 month prior. Protesters now want those responsible for reviewing the case, especially the social workers involved, to answer for what was missed. Many feel that surface-level checks were mistaken for actual safety. As Ashley put it, the home might have looked fine on the outside, clean rooms, food in the kitchen, But no one seemed to question what was happening beyond that. And somehow, even with visible warning signs, the response was still, "Everything looks fine here." Sometimes it seems appearances really do pass inspection, even when the truth doesn't.
𝐂𝐨𝐬𝐿, a longtime acquaintance of the Loving family, expressed deep frustration over what she described as years of unheeded warnings. She shared that there had been multiple alerts to Child Protective Services, some submitted by her directly, regarding the children's safety. "Those of us who were familiar with the family kept speaking up," she said. "We reported again and again, hoping someone would step in. But at the end of the day, we weren't in a position to remove the kids ourselves, no matter how badly we wished we could." 𝐂𝐨𝐬 believes that a protocol should exist. If repeated reports are made, action should be taken sooner. There are too many stories where children are lost because intervention came too late. She also emphasized a widespread hesitation people feel when considering whether to report. Many, she said, worry their concerns will fall on deaf ears or be dismissed. Still, 𝐂𝐨𝐬 encourages others not to stay silent. Even if it feels like no one's listening, say something. Say it again if you have to, because one report might not change everything, but enough of them just might. And maybe cases like this will finally push for change. In the wake of the tragedy, 𝐂𝐨𝐬 and others are now supporting an initiative called Isabella's Law. The proposal would require more frequent and unannounced welfare checks for families previously flagged by child services. It's a suggestion born from heartbreak, but rooted in the hope of preventing future loss. Records reveal that Nicholas Loving had been convicted in a case back in 2014, this involving Andrea's eldest son from a prior relationship. At the time, Nicholas and Andrea had only been together a few months. The conviction stemmed from the toddler sustained, which Nicholas attributed to a mishap during bath time. Despite the charges, Andrea urged the court for leniency. The court granted probation, citing his employment, and expressed remorse. In an ironic twist only bureaucracy could deliver, the couple later shared joint custody of the same child. 𝐂𝐨𝐬 also recalled several conversations where Andrea seemed overwhelmed and frustrated with her children. She noted that Andrea often called Nicholas home from work to help. Regarding public claims that Andrea had been a victim of domestic abuse, 𝐂𝐨𝐬 shared her doubts. "She never acted afraid of him," she said. "In fact, she often praised him as a caring husband and father." Meanwhile, others in the community noticed unusual behavior, like Izabella being kept apart from other children during events. She was rarely seen interacting or eating, and any attempt to engage with her was quietly discouraged. At one point, a parent offering the child a blanket was reportedly turned down because nothing says "everything's fine here," like refusing kindness during cold weather. A school librarian recalls that during every interaction with the Loving family, Izabella remained in her stroller without much movement or engagement. While she found the family's behavior slightly unusual, she assumed the young girl may have been dealing with a medical condition. Still, after once noticing a mark on Isabella's face, the librarian felt uneasy enough to report it to Child Services. One of the more revealing aspects of Isabella's treatment at home came not from conversations, but from posts shared publicly by her mother, Andrea. Around the holidays, Andrea posted notes tied to an elf on the shelf, and many who later viewed them noticed they gave off a strange and uncomfortable feeling. In these posts, Izabella was either singled out or not mentioned at all. One particular note suggested that everyone in the house, including the parents, needed to improve their behavior in order to stay in Santa's good graces. The message warned that a final chance had been granted, making the holidays feel more like a probation period than a festive season. Oddly enough, even Isabella's name was spelled incorrectly, adding an unsettling sense of detachment. Another message used the elf to deliver what seemed like a veiled comment on family tensions, referencing arguments between the adults. In yet another, the elf reflected on sadness in the home, unsure how Santa might respond to what it had witnessed. What should have been a lighthearted game for children came across more like passive-aggressive commentary. And in the middle of it all, the elf became less of a toy and more of a silent witness with a very uncomfortable front row seat. After Isabella's passing, a quiet memorial took shape outside the house where she once lived. The sidewalk filled with soft tributes, balloons, flowers, candles, and small stuffed toys placed gently by those who wanted to honor her memory.
Around Cold Springs, pink ribbons have been tied on fences, street signs, and car mirrors. These ribbons not only reflect a community in mourning, but also represent a growing call for accountability. On April 11th, 2025, a candlelight vigil was organized in her name. As part of the tribute, residents were asked to light up their porches in her honor that evening. They were also encouraged to swap out their bulbs for pink or purple ones, colors said to be her favorites. The turnout that Friday was significant, with locals gathering to pay their respects and reflect on the loss of a young child. "It's completely surreal. Words really fail here," one person shared at the vigil. Thinking about what that child might have endured, it's hard not to feel overwhelmed. People did reach out, they filed reports, and yet somehow nothing changed. As a therapist, I've seen this happen before. Cases closed when they shouldn't be, and it stays with you. Thank you for taking the time to hear Isabella's story. It's one that stays with you, not only because of the photos or the pain in her eyes, but because the people who should have protected her didn't. And yet only one arrest has been made so far. With everything that's come to light, it's hard to imagine that accountability ends there. Hopefully, justice still has a few steps left to take, even if it's just catching up slowly, one charge at a time. If Isabella's story moved you, please consider sharing this video to help raise awareness about the cracks in the systems meant to protect vulnerable children. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and if you believe change is overdue, say her name. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter, and hit the notification bell to stay updated as justice unfolds. No child should be forgotten, and no voice should go unheard.